Marc-Alexis Côté.
Hey,
Mr. Ubisoft.
pleasure to be here.
So great to have you here. Check the chairs out.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do some social networking.
Okay, that's
you
fine.
You just run
I'm
and let
so
me know when
used
you're
to that.
finished, okay?
Execs do that all the time.
Exactly. So we have Mark from Ubisoft, or you go by Mac.
I go by Mac usually. It's less confusing for people because
Yeah,
people
exactly.
are like Marc-Alexis, Mark what? So.
And then you get a hyphen in there, and no one knows what to happen. And cats and dogs living together, it's madness. So we have Mac here from Ubisoft, and some of you may have heard of this little startup, Ubisoft. Yeah, okay. So why don't we talk a little bit about the fact that here you are, you're working in one of the most iconic video game companies in the world, and how did this all start? Tell me how this all got going.
Well, first of all, Joe, thank you for having me here, for inviting me to XDS in beautiful Vancouver. This is my first time at XDS, my first time in Vancouver as well. I know. I've had the chance to go all around the world, but unfortunately, sometimes you just don't visit your own country.
I know, right? Totally.
So it's a pleasure to be here this week. Thanks again to Isabelle, my partner in crime, who's responsible for all our partnerships on the Assassin's Creed franchise. She's been trying to convince me for 2 years now to come to XDS, and I finally agreed, and she got me on this stage. So it's your fault, Isabelle, if I say anything stupid. So it's going to be
that'll be my gig.
We're going to blame you. No. We'll edit it out. So, and if I say anything that doesn't make any sense, I'll blame it on being French speaking.
Great.
So don't hesitate to correct me if I say something that cannot be understood. So yeah, thanks for having me here. Maybe if I can introduce myself. So my name is Marc-Alexis Côté. I'm the Vice President and Executive Producer on Assassin's Creed. I've been in the industry for, what seems like a long time now, so about 20 years. Right after I finished university, I got the chance to do my dream job, which was video games. So like probably most of you, video games started very young for me. I remember being 6 years old at Christmas, and my father had locked the door to my brother and myself's playroom, and there was something behind that we didn't know what it was. And on Christmas Day, we discovered it was a Sega Master System. Changed my life forever. Vividly remember playing Phantasy Star, Alex Kidd, to the great despair of my mother. Who had great plans for me to play violin and to be a pianist. So that did not happen. So I did different things with my hands and didn't play piano. And believe it or not, this is something I had kind of abandoned that dream for a while. I went on to study in Ottawa at Ottawa U. I got a bachelor's degree in computer engineering. And then I went to Montreal to get a master's degree in software engineering. Then I felt the urge to go back home. I wanted to work in my home city. And for 3 months after I graduated, I was doing AI stuff. It was not that trendy back then. I was applying my knowledge to try to sort tomatoes between good tomatoes and bad tomatoes using AI and image recognition. And then there was a press release in the local journal, because they still existed back then, that Ubisoft was coming to Quebec City and opening a studio. And within 5 minutes, I had applied. I went to all the interviews. They almost did not pick me up, because in these early days of the industry, having a master's degree was considered to be overeducated to be in the industry. We wanted people who could cut corners, and I was not seen as someone that could cut corners to ship games, and I proved them otherwise very, very quickly. So I was part of the founding members of the Quebec studio. Started out 20 people. We're about 600 now. And I'm very happy to be managing the Assassin's Creed franchise from my hometown. Now, I've had the chance, and if I'm speaking too much, you interrupt me, Joe.
Oh.
I've had the chance to, one of the things I've loved about my career at Ubisoft is the chance that I've had to have, what I would say, multiple careers within Ubisoft. And I don't know if any of you can relate to that, or if your company has given you that chance. But I started out as an engineer, working mostly on, I was working on open season at the beginning. This was my first game. Still really loved that experience, but I was very involved into building the tools and improving the tool chain for our creators to be able to create the game. So involved more on the engine side, and then on. I kind of got bored in a way by doing that. There were two things that happened. I admired the people that were above me, and I was like, "There's no way I'll ever replace them." And then on the other side, I was like, I didn't feel as close to the games as I wanted to. And I asked to switch my career to design, actually. And it was kind of controversial at the moment because I was a promising engineer. And it's like, why would we change someone who's a promising engineer to be a designer? And I forced my way through that, began to lead our design teams. And then something happened in 2008 or 2009. The strategy of Ubisoft changed to focus more on our big franchises. Sounds something familiar that's happening again in the industry at this moment. And the smaller studio that was Quebec City was assigned to work on two big franchises, Prince of Persia and Assassin's Creed. And Prince of Persia was my love. I was in love with that franchise, and I considered it a punishment to be on Assassin's Creed. And I remember the MD of the studio forcing me into a car driving to Montreal. It's like, you're going to work on Assassin's Creed.
Bag on your head, blindfold.
I want to work on Prince of Persia. So I cannot thank him enough today. It turned out pretty well for me. But I started on AC as a exotic mission director. It's like,
that's
the coolest title I've ever had. So I was tasked with building the Leonardo da Vinci machines, and I love that mandate.
How boring.
No, but it's something we can touch on later on because that's how a lot of innovation came into the Assassin's Creed franchise because of our co-dev model early on, where the lead studio would take and tackle the core of the game and outsource innovation in a way to its partner studios, right? And outsource risk. And I got the chance to prove myself through that. And in one very, very weird way. That's one of the weirdest things that ever happened in my career. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood was nominated for a Game Award. And the Game Award show fell on the same day as the Montreal Christmas party. The Montreal studio Christmas party. So they were looking for someone to go. And I was like, well, you know what? I'll go. And then it's like the only year that we actually won was that year. So I picked up the award for Assassin's Creed. And like that gave me a lot of visibility that I managed to do and move on to do other things. So I was then creative director on all the DLCs of Assassin's Creed 3. And then I took a crazy bet. I went to the Montreal studio, dressed in a suit, met with the exec producer of the franchise and told them, like, I want my studio to build the next big Assassin's Creed. Everybody thought it was crazy. And 3 months later, the phone rang, and it was like, how does it sound? Do you want to build Assassin's Creed Syndicate and be the creative director on it? So sometimes you have to take risks. You have to put yourself out there. So I got the chance to get the mandate for the studio to build Assassin's Creed Syndicate. And I'm sure, Joe, this is something you might be familiar with. But once I was done building this big AAA game, I was like completely burnt out creatively. And I had we shipped the game at the end of October, but throughout September, October, November, you've got a team of 500 people. It's like, what's next? What's next? What's the next game about? What's the story? What's this? And you're like, I've just finished building this, and I already have to think about the next one. So I decided to switch my career again to do something that's much easier than creative direction. It's like producing. It's like, I'll do that instead. I'll take my engineering skills, what I know about creative direction, and try to be a producer. and I had a great time producing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I felt that my brain was really wired. It's like it took the best of engineering. Well, the thing is, when you're a creative director, to me at least the way my brain is wired, I find that I cannot rest. I wake up in the middle of the night, always say, oh, we could be doing that instead. And when you're producing, well, there's always a limit to what you can, how perfect your production plan can be, right? It's more about adapting to changes. So we shipped Odyssey, was great. And then that's another war story. I'm not sure we'll get time to get into that, but we got tasked with building a new IP in a very, very, very short amount of time. So that was Immortals Fenyx Rising. So that project kind of broke my heart in a way. Still one of the favorite games I've ever built. Unfortunately, it was not commercially viable for the franchise to continue. But I felt we had something great. I had a lot of fun building that game. And once we were done with that, I was asked to come back on the Assassin's Creed franchise and lead it as its executive producer, which is the role I'm in now. So sorry, that was a very long-winded summary of my career, but when feel free to ask your question.
But what's cool about that is that, I'm sure a lot of people here can relate, because I think a lot of people here have started in one role and they pivoted to other roles, and I actually think that makes someone a much more valuable employee. Because you get someone that, you get an engineer that has a bit of creativity towards them, and then they want to put that creativity, and they know how to execute upon the creativity, and then you become, a producer, and then all about the resourcing required to make the creative thing work with the execution of the code. That probably gives you a leg up, but it was probably met with a little bit of resistance. It's like, oh, what does this smart-ass coder know? Like, you probably ran into that.
Absolutely. On my first transition or my first career change, I remember the level designers. I was like, come on, dude, I've been building your tools. I can manage you. So I came in a bit hot, like I'm a programmer. I know everything. That did not go out very, very well. So I had to learn a lot of humility, because I realized that I could not use the tools that I had built, which was something that's recurrent in our industry. Happens a lot. But the best thing for my life that thing ever did was to cure me of my scare of. I was very scared of flying, of taking planes. I would cry before I walked on a plane. My wife would hold me by my hand, and I was insufferable. I asked her not to eat on the plane, because just the smell of the food was making me panic. And I realized I had trust issues. I did not trust the plane. I did not trust the pilot.
So you're an engineer.
I'm an engineer. No,
you're an engineer.
And
trust
after
issues.
my master's degree, I started to be scared of flying after my master's degree, because I was like, I thought it was the creme de la creme that would do a master's degree, and I realized that sometimes it's that's going to sound harsh, but not everybody who has a master's degree is because they are passionate about it. Sometimes it's because they cannot find a job, and they decide to just continue studying, which is was half of my cohort. I was like, interesting. These people build planes. And then I started being very, very scared until I realized that no one wanted to actually die.
Most people will kind of avoid that.
No, I know it's kind of a feature that's built in. But when I go back to the design thing, is that I was in charge of people I had no idea what their actually day-to-day work was. And as an engineer, I was convinced if anyone on my team fell, I could just pick up their keyboard and finish the job. And now I was leading a team of people who I could not do that. I could only talk them through executing the work and what we were trying to accomplish. And that kind of something switched in my brain, and I stopped being afraid of flying. So that was it's one of the things that I've loved about working for Ubisoft, is because all those changes has allowed me to grow as a person, and I think I've made me a better person over the years. But back to your point, I do think that in our industry, especially with the complexity of the games that we're building now, I was having coffee with some of my colleagues recently, and I told them that I have a feeling that a young version of me would see older version of me and the complexity that we're dealing with, and would instantly die. And so it's like, I'm just leaving. I'm leaving this industry. It's crazy. I never thought when I started out that we would scale to such a level of complexity of rebuilding essentially our world with every game. But like year after year, I think we rewire ourselves, we grow, but our industry needs more T-shaped people that can like understand how things are built to make smarter decisions.
Yeah, I agree with that. When I first got started in my career, I was a producer, and there were two kind of producers, like the producers that knew what they're doing, and then the double gun producers, right? And we've all worked with those guys. And what I discovered was, I think the common denominator of being successful is being good at communicating. And whether that's communicating in the written word or communicating verbally with people, because I learned very early on that when you're a producer and you're very creative and you want to talk to an engineer, they really do, most of them do speak a different language. If you say, I want a 3D front end, which is what we were doing at EA years ago, we want a 3D front end, and I had this big argument with an engineer. And so can't do it. And I was getting pissed off and talking to my boss, this guy's can't do it. And they said, what do you mean can't do it? I said, can't do it for 3D front end. And then I realized the engineer that I was talking to actually thought I wanted him to do a 3D rendered menu system. And the other engineer goes, well, I can make it look 3D, but it won't be 3D. And I'm like, well, yeah. And they're like, well, you didn't say that. I'm like, oh, and it was such a lesson for me. And I was being a smart ass at the time, but it was such a lesson that not everyone speaks the same language, but it's the language of technology, of creativity, and you have to really lean into that. And that must have been, I'm going to say you must have had a leg up, because you knew, in engineering, creative production, you knew how all those languages and different people would kind of like mesh. And so that must have been a real challenge for you.
There are advantages and disadvantages.
Sure.
Like one of the advantages of being an engineer, I guess, is that you understand how I'm a systems engineer.
Yep.
So I see everything as a machine that needs to be optimized, as data that flows from point A to point B, from talent that needs to be involved at different points in the change. But sometimes I've realized the more you understand, the pitfall is the less you expect everybody to have the same understanding as you, and then you under-communicate. And then people are afraid of speaking up, so they just end up building a 3D menu when you wanted a 2D one that looked 3D, and you end up with cost overruns, with not building the thing that you need. So I would agree with you. It's all about communication, and communicating in a way that is understood, and over-communicating. That's what I keep telling my producers, is that it's all about making sure that people understand what the vision is. That even if you have to get on a stage, it's like when I was first creative director, I remember I worked with an incredible producer. What he would do is put me on a stage every week, and it's like, you're going to go in front of the team every week, and you're going to explain the game to them. It's like, yeah, but I explained it last week. Yeah, but you're going to explain it every week. And I remember shaking.
It's great.
I was like, oh no, we're Sunday again. So it means I need to go on a stage on Monday and speak to 500 people. I would be so nervous, learning everything.
And that's a key point, the team, 500 people, not like a group this size, 500 people.
And that's the thing, that's one of the big challenges that we have at Ubisoft. We have very, very big teams to manage on more than 15, 17 studios a lot of the time. So it all becomes about communication. Right. And I have producers and creative directors, sometimes it's just I'm always on the stage talking and I'm always making presentations. That's your job. Your job is to make sure that everybody always understands and has a clear vision of the game we're building. And I found that's the differentiator between a game that ships on time, a game that ships late, a game that is great, a game that is less good. It's often about how the leadership communicates, keeps people engaged, and not just internally, but externally as well. So I've been a big advocate internally that we treat our external partners in the same way as our internal partners. They need to see, I keep thinking that once you understand what the big picture is, you'll do a better job. Even if your job is not the big picture, if you know where what you're doing fits in, you'll make better decisions.
Yep.
I'd rather take that chance of over-communicating, of making sure that everybody has access to information, because what we do is increasingly complex.
Right. Exactly. And when you think about, I like what you said about talking about the teams, the external teams that you partner with. It's been my experience that there are companies that just want to throw work over the fence and just look at the dollar sign and figure out what, just do this. And then there's the good companies you want to deal with that welcome you into the fold. It's like, hey, you're an external company, but for the next 8 months to 10, whatever it is, you're going to be part of Ubi. You're going to be working with us. We're going to treat you like you are part of our family, and you are going to be, even remotely embedded in our product. And I think that's something that you've done.
But that's what we try to do. That's what we aspire. This is the values that we aspire to live by. Do we always succeed? Probably not. I don't think we always succeed internally. But I have my teams know that I have a zero tolerance to disrespect for it.
Right.
I consider that not respectful. Right. If you're not treating someone as an equal partner, right, regardless of where they're from. And I know it's it's tough because our teams sometimes go upwards of 1,000 of people, and every time there's a conflict, I keep telling people, no one wants this game not to succeed, right? So just go back to. It's probably a communication misunderstanding. To go back to that, you're either not speaking the same language, you either do not have the same expectations. Oh, but they're doing the work is not good. Have you told them? And oftentimes they're like, no. I was like, well, maybe we can start there by having this conversation that you've not met the requirements. Have you given the requirements? Oh, what requirements? Well. Yeah, so I see Erika there, laughing because it's an issue that because it's an issue that we have. Like the team is angry. It's like, oh, it's not meeting the requirements, but you didn't send the requirements. Oh, well, they should guess the requirements. Well, yeah, that's not how human communication works. So it's an ongoing effort. And in any case, we have a very complex tool chain as well internally. It's both part of our success and what makes it super difficult to collaborate with us as well. I know of no pipeline in the world that allows for thousands of developers to work at the same time on the same game, concurrently, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, across the world, across multiple sites, checking in data across the board. It's just, when I look, sometimes I get excited, it's like the system engineer in me. I look at the input of data coming in to making Assassin's Creed games.
And it's a challenge to solve.
But it's a huge challenge, but it's very exciting to see it all come together so fast.
Yeah.
One of the sorry, I won't touch my mic again, I promise. But
you're okay.
I tend to
strike
move my
one. You got a
hands
couple
lot
more
when I speak. But one of the things that I can share, but I don't know if I can share it. I'll share it anyways. So, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which I think is one of our best game.
I would agree.
Thank you. It doesn't sound very humble because I produced
it's okay.
it, but
it's a good product.
But thank you. Was built over the course of 6 months. Right? It's a huge game. When I say built, it's like internally we have a milestone that's called the first playable. And then we go into, which is a vertical slice of the game. Many companies have that. And then you go into production until you've got the alpha, which internally for us is a first playable of the entire game. Right? So the entirety of the game is mostly produced, needs to be polished at that point. But you have 6 months between the FP and the alpha of a game that has 256 square kilometers of playable area, which is just humongous. But you've got data and people checking in, talk. All this comes together, and then you have to make it make sense. So for the other 6 months, that's left. But that's the power of Anvil, our internal engine, in a way. And we've, I think, one of the big challenges that we've had in the past is that we've had multiple Assassin's Creed games in development in parallel. And there was a lot of competition between the teams, right? So you would, I'll give you an example. Assassin's Creed Syndicate started off Assassin's Creed Unity. But then you have Assassin's Creed Origins coming out afterwards, and it started from Assassin's Creed Unity as well. So you have two games that branch off and makes it super difficult to collaborate. And then you have a game like Assassin's Creed Syndicate that has physics-driven vehicles, and you have a game like Assassin's Creed Origins that have animation-driven vehicles. So completely different technology, completely different handling for players, completely different work streams for people working on it. So huge amount of complexity to make when you have multiple games like this in development. One of the breakthroughs that we've had over the last few years that I think is going to be helpful for our external partners as well, and it makes the development even crazier, is that instead of everybody branching, even our other sister brands as well, into their own different branches, all the games on Anvil right now are developed in the same code branch, in parallel at the same time. So there's no more branching. It's a technology that we call the mono repo, which means like single repository. Not a huge fan of the name, but it's we went from a philosophy of we're competing against each other within the company to try to innovate and hide our innovation in different branches to sharing by default, right? So I'm super excited. Like just before I took the plane, I was seeing some changes that were recently made in Shadows, and I was seeing a game that's coming out 3 years from now immediately benefiting from that. I cannot name that game, but it's a completely different game. It's a shooter. It's like it has nothing to do with Assassin's Creed. And because we've changed the way we work, technologically speaking, the improvements are automatic, but they should be for our external partners as well. Since we've put everything, we've centralized the Anvil team mostly. We've trying to balance the autonomy that we give to each team to innovate, but making sure that their innovation feeds the entirety of our games pipeline. That's one of the ways we're trying to address the increasing complexity of making games.
So, not asking you to give away any secrets, but there's so many different flavors of Assassin's Creed. There's so many different kinds of ways to play it and different versions of it. How do you decide? You know, what's your process? And hey, we're going to make another Assassin's Creed. You know, there's a surprise, but like it's going to be like this. How do you manage that with all these different versions coming out?
There's no clear. I don't have a clear answer for you because it depends on the experience of the core team, where we're trying to steer the franchise. So the answer is different today than it used to be. So the process we're applying right now is to try to address some of the challenges that our industry is facing. There's no surprise. Like I think we are in a complex and tough economical situation right now, at least in the games industry. We've all seen our costs rising, our profits shrinking in a way. There's a lot of very, very intense competition. But the cost of building games has probably increased tenfold since the first Assassin's Creed and the one that's coming out this year. Both cost, complexity, amount of people has probably risen by a factor of 10. So, and when you look at who succeeds at least in the AAA space, right? So what I'm going to say applies to like mostly premium games, more traditional kind of AAA games. you have 10 games in any given year that will sell about 10 million copies, right? The reason I'm quoting the 10 million copies mark is from what I've seen and how I've seen our costs and the costs of competitors and everybody. I mean, everything leaks in our industry,
right.
So you have like privileged information on where the competition is going, but mostly I estimate that 10 million copies, give or take 2 million copies, is probably what you need to break even. But you have only 10 games that breach that every year. Out of those 10, you'll have probably 3 sports games.
Yeah.
You'll have 4 games on established franchises, and probably 2 or 3 games that are surprise hits coming from nowhere. But that leaves very, very little room and wiggle room for success, right? So the way I'm trying to steer the Assassin's Creed franchise through that. In previous years, our formula was like pick a setting, a world, a time, an interesting time and place, and build a game. And try to improve on the games that came before. So, and that was a winning formula for many years. I think players expect a lot more of us now, and they have so much. There's so much offer, right?
Yeah.
When you come out with an Assassin's Creed game, you're not only coming out. You're not only competing against the competition. You're competing against your own back catalog, right? So, if you've released a hit game like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and you come out with a new game, but your old game is 6 years old now and it still looks pretty good.
Amazing.
It's scaled very well technologically speaking with new consoles. We've released patches to make it run at 4K and etc. But you can have it for $20, right? So the $80 game that I come out with better be very, very good, right? So we need, because of back catalog, because of that's widely accessible, because of subscription services, it's putting a lot of pressure on innovation being better.
Right.
So my answer to that is, it's a long-winded answer to your question, right? But I think I'm trying to build better technology so that we can benefit more from the innovations of all our peers within the company and stopping this kind of weird circle of rebuilding what someone else is doing within the company. So trying to be better there. Trying to manage our partners both internally and externally better so that we can build on the expertise of people while giving them autonomy, but making better choices or different choices about what kind of Assassin's Creed games we build, right? So this old formula that says like just copy the game from the year before, try to make it a little bit better with a new story in a new setting, which is a simplification of what we did, but that was kind of the perception that was there at one point. So I'm trying to manage the portfolio of Assassin's Creed games so that we, for example, this year we have our big RPG coming out, Assassin's Creed Shadows. The last time we released an RPG was in 2020 with Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Right.
So we spaced that out. And then the next one after is going to come much later because I feel that there's a limit. There's both a limit to how we can produce those are big RPG games that have hundreds of hours of scope, and there's a limit to the innovation. If we are on a yearly schedule with RPGs, there's a limit to the innovation, and we'll saturate the market and just end up competing against ourselves. So I'd rather we space those out and make sure that each one that we release is seen as an innovative product. But Assassin's Creed, to me, has so much more to offer, right? There's our back catalog that we can make more current by improving some of our older games and using our modern engine to allow players to re-experiment these games in a more modern way. So that's one way we can keep the franchise fresh. We're also building shorter, tighter more cinematic experiences within our universe that allows us to explore different periods of humanity in a way that doesn't have to be a 150-hour RPG. We're experimenting with multiplayer as well. So I mean, that's the way I'm trying to address the challenges that we're facing, right? So more innovation, more different games, but better control of our investment through better technological investment and better management of our partners.
Right. Well, when you pick up a new Ubi game, you know it's a new Ubi game. You know right away. You start playing, it's like, oh, it's a new Ubi game, right? You know, you always expect certain levels of quality and details, and I always find I learn a lot of stuff when I play the game. It's like, well, this is way more fun to learn this way.
But you know, it's not surprising, because the first question Yves asks every team. He's a fascinating CEO. So it's like you have this kickoff meeting. That's the first gate of most projects at Ubisoft. And sorry to have interrupted.
No, not at all.
It's like, so Yves is at the front row, and he's looking at you like he's got an array of phones that are all turned down, and then he's looking at you intently, and you've got a bunch of people that are like blah 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 blah. They're on their phones. Like you got the CEOs like solely focused.
Which
on
is
you.
Nice, by the way, to have his full attention.
Oh, I know. And then you do your presentation, blah blah blah. And then your first question is. It's this go-to question. It always starts that way, and I'm always surprised when I prepare people. I try to prepare people to answer that question, and one out of every two times they just whiff it, and I'm like, but I told you it was going to be the first question, and that question is, what will players learn when they play your game? It's not how much money am I going to make. It's like how many players. It's like it's always what will players learn. Because like I think what has driven Yves for 36, 37 years now is this idea that video games can change the world. And you change the world by changing people. And if you give them something to think about, even while they're having fun, right? If they can learn something, well, then you can like change one person, you can change the world.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny, I was thinking about what you were saying about the changing audience, and one of the people I worked with, you know, as it happens, I was having a conversation about Star Wars, because that just happens when you make video games, right? And we were talking about Star Wars, and we're rambling on, and this person said to me, yeah, I don't care about any of that. Like the guy with the black helmet, like, what was that guy? I'm like, oh my God, what? And she said, I haven't watched all that old stuff. I'm like, but we're talking about Star Wars. She goes, yeah, I don't care about that. She goes, my first Star Wars was The Mandalorian. I said, your first Star Wars was The Mandalorian. She goes, yeah, I don't care about that stuff. And she loves it, and she's into all the new stuff. And you know, at first, you know, I was like, oh my God, who are you? And then after that, I was like, well, of course. This is her experience, and people are growing up with beloved franchises. And for many people, you have the Assassin's Creed people that have aged with you along with the franchise, but then you have new people that are coming in, and how can you pull them in with their different reality and expectations, right? And that must be a super challenging.
It is challenging. I think it's solvable, but it is solvable I have the chance to have what I call an evergreen franchise, and it's a great honor to be able to steward that, because the playground that I have in front of me is the entirety of humanity history. So it's diverse, it can be inclusive, we can tell different stories that will have a pull for different people in different parts of the world, and we're not stuck telling the same story over and over again with the same heroes. So each time you pick up an Assassin's Creed game, I want you to learn something new, which is very important, but to discover another part of the world, another part of our shared history. And that's what I like about Assassin's Creed, because it can feel always fresh, because in each game that you play, and it's a plus and a minus, you can start, but it's tough for, I've said
that's two.
I know that's 2 strikes. Next time the sniper is going to shoot me. But it's both a plus and a minus, because each time you can start fresh.
Yes.
But there's risk to starting fresh every time, right? You need to building these protagonists so that they're engaging, so that people relate to them. So once you've got a recipe, like it's no wonder they're still making Indiana Jones, right? You can relate to Indiana Jones, and people instantly gravitate towards like the persona of the character. But it's a challenge on Assassin's Creed to start fresh, but it's also an opportunity to try to innovate. And I think that's one of the things that people will notice, starting with Shadows, is that we've tried to make the game, the franchise, more welcoming by focusing more, I should say focusing differently on, because Assassin's Creed is two stories at the same time. It's always been that way. You've got the present day, so how you're going into the past has its own story, and you have the past itself. So we've bundled those two stories very differently for Shadows that will allow us to have more flexibility into the future to make the franchise more welcoming, so that we avoid the Star Wars issues like who's the dude with the black helmet, and try to make it more about like your own experience within the franchise.
Right, great. One more question, then we're going to let you all ask some questions with this super cool mic I get to throw into the audience. When you work on products such as Assassin's Creed, those games can tend to take quite a long time to make, and a lot of people to make it. How do you keep your team engaged? How do you keep your team like fresh and excited about that? Because people are having less and less attention span time. How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them feeling, yeah, I'm here for the long haul?
But it's not always. But to be honest and to be frank, not everybody's always motivated through the roof. One of the fun things that we did on Odyssey was like every 2 weeks I would do a pulse survey to try to monitor the engagement of people and try to quickly pinpoint what had demotivated them. And one of the things that I noticed, so roughly like the engagement numbers that stayed around like 80% engagement throughout the project. And I'm not an 80% kind of guy, and I was like, why 80%? That sucks. People keep telling me it's like, oh, it's pretty good actually, but it's like I want 100. That's why I've stopped playing golf. By the way, it's like it says normal is 72. It's like I cannot play 72, so I don't play a game anymore. So no, just kidding. I still love it, but I think it's communication. It goes back. It's like full round circle in this conversation. The way we keep people engaged is by over communicating, sharing, having team events that are inclusive. It's something that I do on the franchise, like because how do you keep people engaged not only towards a game, but towards an entire franchise, an entire pipeline of products that are being developed. It's like every. I say twice a year, we hold what we call a all hands town hall. Like I think last time we had 3,000 people within watching the stream live, where we share about like all the upcoming games. And what gets people excited and engaged is knowing what we're trying to achieve and communicating about it, and just openly taking questions, answering the questions that people may have, their fears. I have no problems with people telling me, employees telling me live in front of everybody, I think your plan sucks. I was like, okay, let's talk about it. Because if you have the courage to tell me you think my plan sucks, probably other people are thinking that as well.
But please come with a solution. Please come with thoughts on how to unsuck it.
No, but it's okay. It's trying to bring that conversation there. Do you want to be part of the solution and everything? And every time we do those events, and every time we engage in communication, and that we're honest and transparent about it, people come out engaged and more engaged. So it's so that's part of the equation. Making sure. One of the other parts that honestly we've been struggling with always, because sometimes it feels we're building the airplane as we're trying to fly it in terms of tool chain, is people react very negatively to not being able to do their work because the tool chain is broken, or something like that. So this is something we monitor actively. I think we'll never be perfect.
No.
People will always find something to complain about their tools, but I think we have to aim for perfection there. So we're investing heavily on that.
Yep.
So communication, having good tools, having meaningful work, making sure people feel they're contributing to this huge thing that we're building. Because when you're 2,000 building a game, sometimes you can feel that you're just like building one animation, but that animation is important.
Yeah, it's pivotal.
Yeah.
Okay. There is a super cool mic that there it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you the opportunity to ask some questions while we have Marc-Alexis on stage. So this super cool mic is fun to throw if and when you catch it. I've seen people take it in the face. Just speak into this part here. All right. So does anyone, while we have him here for about another 10 minutes, anybody have any questions they'd like to ask?
Or I'm going to check your social.
Or we're just going to
check your social.
Okay, great.
Throw it.
Here.
Throw
so
it.
I'm going to underhand lob it there. So.
Perfect. Test check. Hey, cool microphone.
I know, right?
Hi, Mark. I'm Mike from Calgary, Studio Monsoon. My question, you mentioned communication a lot, and I appreciate your focus on that. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on strategies that you find are working on building trust with your internal and external partners when you're communicating? You mentioned that you've got these town halls and you're connecting regularly, but how are you finding success in building that authenticity and trust with your team, both inside and outside?
I think it's about being transparent. People see the problems. If you try to hide them, they will find it, and they will lose trust in you for trying to hide it from them. And building games is hard. I think we need to always be honest about that. I remember there's one thing in my career. I keep remembering that comic strip on Penny Arcade. I don't know if you guys used to read it, but at one point they built a game, and one of the comic strips was about realizing how difficult it is to build games. And I think one of the titles or one of the thing that was written is like, a game is shit until it's good. And I think this is something we've all experienced.
Yeah.
Like you're like, it sucks, and then suddenly it starts to be good. But I think it's walking people through that. One of the things that I've noticed since the pandemic is that we have a lot of juniors in our teams, and I don't know if this is something that's your case as well, but the seniority has lowered globally, and probably half the team that's building an Assassin's Creed is building a game for the first time. So they don't know. So you have to explain to them that even though they're playing the game right now and they think it's the worst thing they've ever seen, it's going to be good. Okay, we're going to get there, and explain that I've been there as a leader. I remember my first time on Assassin's Creed. Like it was July, and the game was shipping in October. And I was like, there's no way this thing ends up shipping. And 91 Metacritic. Oh, okay, this is good. So I was wrong, because like again, it's not good until it is, and you need to be try to be as transparent as possible about like the playtest results, the appreciation, what's working, what's not working, and I think it's this genuinely sharing with your teams is, in my experience, what has allowed me to maintain the communication channels open, making sure people can come and see me if they see a problem. So I think it's really about trust and making sure you don't break this trust with your team, and if you do, that you're honest about it, and that you make sure that you don't do it again.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing. Who's next?
Anybody else looking for that awesome throw? Okay, here's your challenge.
It's a close one. I've got one next to me here, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're just chicken to throw it that far.
Nice throw. Thank you. And
You're
Mac,
next.
Thank you so much for the very interesting presentation. I'm Carla Rylance, Behaviour Interactive and XDS Advisory Committee. What role do you think external development will play in the next 3 to 5 years in the games that you will make, do you think? Do you think things will change or evolve, or do you think things will stay the same?
I think we're in an era of peak change. I don't know what the industry is going to look like in 5 years, but clearly we're transforming, and I think it can create anxiety. I see it as a challenge that we need to solve together. Because I would say, whether it's in the AAA space or even in the more indie space, I mean, the recipe for success, as it's been in the last, I would say, maybe 20 years, is dramatically shifting. So we still need to innovate. We need to control our costs because they have ballooned clearly over the last 5 years. We need to find where players are, which has been a question that I've been having for the last 2 years. Where are players? What are they playing? Where do we reach them? So all this, I think, will become clearer in the coming years as our industry transforms. For our external partners, I think, and UB is we're very insular, so we've got 20,000 employees, and we do oftentimes, we're not, I think, the easiest company to break into and to be partner with, because we have historically tried to keep things in-house. I'm not in a position to say, will that change or not? We'll see how the market evolves and how Ubisoft evolves through that, but I see so the bigger our games get, the more people we need. There's a point where it doesn't scale, because I cannot have in-house 1,500 artists that build a world, and then I put them in a closet for 2 years until I need them again. So I think there's this thing that we're going to need to address, both at Ubisoft, but there's a question of scale, right? As our games become more and more lifelike, one of the biggest challenge that we're facing, it's like games look nothing. I was looking recently at Assassin's Creed 2, and it looks much better in my mind because someone was complaining that our games have not evolved all that much. And I'm like, and then I look at it, and then I look at what we're doing now and the complexity of what we're doing. It requires, the more lifelike our games become, the more talent it needs. But talent is becoming very, very scarce. I would say the quality of the talent that's needed to be competitive is becoming more scarce. So if you hold that talent within your companies, you're in a very, very good position, because if you are building, you'll need the person that builds the best grass textures possible, and can become a world-renowned expert in grass building. I'm exaggerating, but in a way, but that's I'm looking at how lifelike Assassin's Creed Shadows is looking, where we're almost writing papers now on the wind simulation and how wind affects the leaves and stuff. It's a level of complexity, again, that's unfathomable, just a few years back. So I think the more we move forward, the more we'll be looking for the best experts around the world, and it's impossible for a single company to have all that talent internally, right? And to build and grow that talent internally. Otherwise, you'll do it with a lot of new people that are doing this for the first time, that will repeat the same mistakes, that will affect your cost equation and everything. So to our external partners, I would say it's the more specific and talent, you need specific talent and quality talent that's on offer for us to be able to take advantage of. The other thing that I foresee is I would encourage external partners to look at the games that are being built today and look at where big studios are not competing or seem behind. And is there an expertise that you think you can bring to the table to make these games better? Because the way I'm looking at our own development pipeline at the moment is that despite having leading one of the biggest franchises within Ubisoft, having a lot of means, there's no way I can tackle everything, especially with an in-house engine. And there's a huge amount of talent, but the way I think there's a disconnect right now that's happening within. I'm sorry. If it sounds like a stream of consciousness, I'm sorry. I'll try to be more precise. Not everything in the games that we're building is advancing at the same pace, right? Right now, when you look at a still image of a game, you're like, and I was looking at images of shadows recently, like still renders from the in-game engine, and you compare it to the real world, and you're like, ha ha ha, we've recreated the world. Now things start moving, and you're like, and then you can start seeing the discrepancies. So we've become very, very good at creating very photorealistic images that look like the real world. But the more realistic it looks, the more your expectations in terms of AI, for example, grow. The more you expect people to behave. If the world looks like the real world, you expect people in it to behave like in the real world. And there's a huge question of scale there that's very difficult to address, especially on the behavior side of things. And again, this applies very much to the games that I'm building, so maybe I'm too focused on that. But I think we're facing you look lifelike. The uncanny valley is not actually closing down. It's actually growing because not everything is becoming more lifelike at the same time. So I think that's a place where everybody is going to need help on making AIs and making movement, I should say, in the game. Everything that moves more realistic.
Great.
Awesome. Sorry.
Good one. So that's it for this talk. Marc-Alexis, Ubisoft, thank you very much. Let's hear it for Marc.
Well,
appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.